Woo! So, welcome back everybody to the next video on the channel. So, my name's Tom and this is Zenith Health. Very important topic we're going to be discussing today, and it's how overtraining can stump your progress, a lesson in training smarter. And this is going to massively include myself, but also dive into a bit more of the research and the insights that I feel are needed on this topic, because it was my greatest mistake in my very early years, and I can see a lot of other people now being influenced down the same path in a way from social media, because there's so much more awareness and people sharing their training that may be in incredibly good shape and is influencing people. But there are factors at hand there that enable people to do a lot more training that is actually needed. So, let's dive into it. Now, if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that, everything in the gym you feel like is doing it right, but you're not seeing, let's say, the results you expected. And I know this because I've been there myself. In my early years, I was a bit of a knobhead, to put it politely, but I loved my training, right? So, looking back on what I did was, I was massively into the gym, but I was also into many other sports. I was doing my boxing, I was doing training in mixed martial arts eventually, and I would be training sometimes 6-7 days a week, and some of those days would be twice a day. Fucking terrible idea, right? Right, and it wasn't because I was obsessed. I loved training. A sniff or whiff of training, or someone said, do you want to go and get another session in? I'd probably want to be yeah, fuck yeah, let's go. And of course, I probably had the mindset that more was better. Now, being in the position I am, I definitely know that's not the case. But I was young, stupid, probably testosterone, the highest it's going to ever be naturally, and wanting to just go out there and get in the mixer, I think is a word to put it. But I loved it. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy my training. I still do. I still love it to pieces. But did I get the results that I probably could have got if I'd have been training a lot smarter? I'd probably say no, definitely not. Stumping strength gains, probably even in terms of aesthetics, appearance, even though I'm not really training for that anymore. Yeah, I think it stumped me on both grounds. So I know it derailed my progress. I still made progress, nevertheless, but did it limit the progress that I could have potentially been in a different position at this stage now? I strongly believe so. So I hope that this is going to resonate with some people, and I'll share some insights as to more of the research and probably knowledge that would have done me a world of good if I'd have heard it sat down, someone delivering it to me like this. Because as I was training, that was only when social media was first, even YouTube was just first becoming a thing. So, yeah, that's probably the reason why I didn't get a chance to read into it sooner. So, when we look into this, training that intensely for that amount of time with inadequate recovery is going to stump your progress. And, there's this grind mindset of, more's better, keep pushing on, grind 24/7. And unfortunately, the body just doesn't like that. It doesn't. The world's best athletes will tell you that. And they're some of the people that I wasn't aware of, or people in the space, or the studies and the research that are now really confirming that and bringing it to light. So it wasn't until I delved into that through maturity, through being a coach, through knowing that you never stop learning, I'll say it, but just having that deep level of insight to understand, okay, the mechanisms here, what's at play and what's actually meaningful in terms of a stimulus to the amount of recovery that's needed. And now it's massively influenced my training in my 30s now. I'm in my early 30s. And can I say I've made more progress in probably the last couple of years than I have in the past 10 plus? Yeah, I'd probably say definitely. And it's just down to implementing these better training frequencies and these better training modalities that I'm certainly more aware of now. So one thing that I will bring to light straight away is what would you call the optimal volume of hypertrophy? And there was a recent comprehensive meta-analysis by Schoenfeld and others in 2017, and it analysed multiple studies, concluded that performing at least 10 sets of muscle per week, so this is per week, not in one session, per week, optimised hypertrophy. So taking away from that, some people would say that's just one session. And you could argue that. But then again, I know a lot of people that when you watch social media now and you are following videos of some of your favourite athletes, because more influencers are getting more attention rather than athletes, I'd say, especially in the physique sports like bodybuilding. They're getting so much attention and they're sharing their workouts, and people sort of take it, copy it and paste it into their own, thinking that they're going to look like that because of the way they train. It isn't like that. You're an individual, and copy and pasting someone's training routine, don't do it. I'll just say straight up, you want to individualize your training to your goals, your current position, like your ability, what you enjoy doing, because no point following a program you hate. And this is going to be the big crux here. The reason why so many of them can put in such intense volume and still see results or look good is performance enhancing drugs are, regardless of however people want to call it, taboo, very popular. A lot of people do them. A lot of people aren't honest about doing them. And they give you a super physiological ability to get more adaptation, to perform better, to increase recovery. So this is why people are in the gym as much as they are and putting in as much volume as they are and are able to seemingly go back and continue performing through the week. This is where it's a bit of smoke and mirrors, unfortunately, social media. I'm not knocking anybody that takes any form of performance enhancing drug. It's their choice, it's their body. But if you've got an audience and you've got a following that are listening to what you're saying, I think you need to be very incredibly transparent. I don't necessarily have a following, I don't necessarily have an audience, but I'm very honest in the fact that I've never touched PEDs. I've no interest in really doing them, honestly. I always wanted to push my own natural potential as much as possible. So when I'm showing this around the study and how to optimize hypertrophy in such a smaller frame, which you could call 3 exercises with 3 sets in, or 1 with 4 and 2 with 3, or 5 sets of 2 on different exercises a week, that's going to condense your training sessions into a really short, intensity focused workout. And I sort of do like the idea of like the Mike Mentor training and how Dorian Yates implemented it with his training. Again, I'm not saying the way they trained is the gold standard. I think you need to find a way that works for you. But you can see the results that were generated from it. And it went against the grain of this intense, super physiological volume every week, trying to do more is better. And it's kind of takes it in and goes against the grain with it and proves, you don't really have to do it that way. So that's one of the pieces of research that I found really quite interesting. So the second piece of evidence that sort of caught my interest and piqued my interest to read into more was diminishing returns with excessive volume. And you'll know it in the gym space as junk volume. Now, there was another study by Schoenfeld, and this was done more recently in 2019, and it found that while increasing volume can enhance muscle growth, there's a threshold beyond which additional volume yields minimal returns, benefits, and may even hinder progress. This is what category I fell into, right? So I have to hold my hand up there. More was always better to me because I enjoyed it, like I say. Turns out, fucking terrible idea. Don't do it. If you're watching it, you're going to learn from my mistake here. And, rein yourself in. You can only train as hard as you can recover, right? So there's a big thing with that. Just dial it down a bit. It's better to be able to come back later and repeat either if you've condensed your sessions later in the week or the next week and continually see progress, then just feeling too tired and too knackered and thinking, oh damn, but I need to hit certain numbers, I need to keep pushing it. The body will not perform. Not only that, the central nervous system needs time to recover, and that's a big thing that a lot of people don't talk about. CNS fatigue is very real, very real. But we'll discuss some of the signs and symptoms a bit later on. So yeah, that's my personal reflection, that junk volume, reduce it down and take it out of your workouts completely. It isn't needed, especially if you start training smarter. You know, I like to call it the minimal viable dose of what you can get adaptation from in the gym and not be bollocks from it, because you may have let's say a physically demanding job. So if you're training, you don't want to be knackering yourself up to then go to work absolutely bollocks and then think, I've got to put another 8-hour shift in now and I'm too tired. You know, you've got to find that fucking balance in your life of what's going to give you good returns and what's not going to affect the rest of your life, from just being too tired and too fatigued to either return back to training the following day, if that's how your workout plan looks, or just to be able to perform in your everyday life. Sometimes, you know, bigger picture thinking matters. So these, from the studies that I saw, those two things really did sort of convince me to knock it down a few pegs, and I'm glad I did. And then there was one more study that came up that I found really interesting, and it was about the training frequency and volume equivalence. So this was an actual earlier study, which was researched by Hammersland and others in 2021. It demonstrated that total weekly volume is equated to training frequency. So if you are 2 or 4 sessions per week, it doesn't significantly affect muscle hypertrophy or strength gains. So again, this comes back to that minimal viable dose of what is actually needed for adaptation and what is the threshold of just adding in junk volume for the sake of it and thinking there's like a placebo benefit. Because if you can get more from doing less, I think everyone in their life, if you could get that from the job, from doing less work, earning more money, bit of a no-brainer, right? You know, so sitting down and thinking, if the research is showing it, maybe we should start listening to it a bit more, not so much influencers online or just copy and pasting what somebody else does that has the edge, we could call it. We'll call it the edge, that they're not telling you about. Just bear that in mind. I think it's quite a good talking point. Now, these studies did validate my experience, because I was overtraining and not allowing my body to recover, give it what it needed. And once I adjusted this training, which has taken me, it took me so long to undo that mindset, because the more I repeated it, the more that I thought I had to keep pushing past those fatigue boundaries to progress, because I was almost convincing myself I wasn't doing enough. But now I was doing way too much, and I realise it now. So more isn't better, and if you've got that mindset about you, I feel for you, because I've been there. I thought more was the answer, and it isn't. It just isn't. So I've now seen that significant improvements in my strength, in my body composition, and just overall well-being and happiness. I'm no longer just drained, like I mentioned earlier, in everyday things that I have to turn out and do, because it can become the point of an obsession and really quite unhealthy. So hopefully this is going to just give you that bit of learning from my mistakes. And if you've made the same mistakes, but you're earlier in the journey, we could call it, fantastic. You've got an opportunity now to listen to your body and know that recovery is crucial, because you can only train as hard as you recover, and ensure that you're getting the adequate rest needed and minimizing junk volume in your workouts, getting you more time back to go and do other things you may enjoy. So focusing on quality and prioritizing, proper form in your training, controlled movements over just sheer volume, I think has just so many advantages to it. So a couple of tips that we could say here. No, actually, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's talk about some of the signs of overtraining. So some of the typical signs and symptoms. So from my own personal experience, I found, as I mentioned, excessive fatigue or weakness just in everyday following activities, which will crop up, which, was kind of made every other part of my life a bit more challenging. For example, going up and down the stairs from too much leg volume, and just feeling fatigued, run down, brain fog was one of them, excessive muscle soreness or DOMS, and trying to power through in workouts is just not a good sign to start with. Irritability, is it irritability? It must be irritability. I don't know why I'm saying that wrong. But, you know, just general mood and easier to snap at people was probably another thing as well. Because it was just thinking that, you know, why aren't I progressing? Yeah, I'm still training this hard. We could put it down to that maybe. But there's some of the most common signs and symptoms that I experienced. There are a myriad of other things, and I'm going to list them here on screen because I don't want to just be taking up too much of your time watching this video. And I'll give you some structured insight from an athlete myself, from my own mistakes. So I'll come back to one of the first points: structure your workouts and program them to your goals and what you want to get from them. And if you're not so sure, use a coach, work with somebody. I've worked with coaches, I became a coach myself, and their guidance, their insight, their expertise is incredibly invaluable, especially when you're sort of doubting or you're not certain on what to do. Asking for help, there's no judgment there. That's what people are there for, to give you that insight and that wisdom earlier on your journey that they've probably acquired through their own experience, like myself. So one big thing, balance your intensity and recovery, because you've got frequency, intensity and volume. Let's say it's a triangle like that. And the more you stray to one of these corners, the less of the other two that you will include. So the higher intensity, the lower frequency and volume. If you choose to do more volume, then the intensity and frequency needs to drop. And if you're doing frequency, then the intensity and volume needs to be lower. Hopefully that makes sense. One thing to add here is structuring the two underlying pillars of exercise, which is your nutrition and your sleep. They both have to be there, right? To get any body compositional change, you need the food. And to get any adaptation from the diet and the training, you have to be fucking recovering. Great sleep is so underrated. Another thing I did as a youngster, and breaking it was difficult, and I do miss doing it because I don't really have much time now being an adult with more responsibilities on this side, and work and studying, was staying up late gaming. I do miss it. It was great. It was absolutely top shelf entertainment with the boys, you know, on the Xbox, bosh, bit of COD, bit of different games that I loved, but doing it till 2 and 3 in the morning, and then thinking you can get up at like 7, 8, either train or go study, go to work, train after. Yeah, it didn't really work out that well, did it? So again, if you're a youngster that's in the gym, you know, I'm not saying don't play on the Xbox. I'm just saying going for the late night grind and thinking that you can still make progress by skipping on your sleep, you will make so much better progress just getting your sleep and coming off the game a bit early. Be sensible with it. So yeah, the final statement I'll say is that overtraining is common. It's a very common pitfall. It was for me, it does for many people I spoke with. And, you know, especially for people that are driven or enjoy their training like I did. But remember, it's not about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing the right amount, training smart, recovering well, and just listening to your body. Because if you want to get adaptations in the way you look and the way you perform in the gym, yeah, you'll get so much more from it if you just do what I didn't do and implement this advice a lot earlier than I did. So, bosh. If you find it useful, please do like, subscribe to the channel. If you've got any questions, please drop them below. More than happy to have a chit chat or answer anything that comes up. And yeah, until the next video, bosh.